Plastic surgery has arrived, no more limited to hush-hush conversations within celebrity circles or counted as breaking news in page 3 gossip columns. It's become the talk of the town. But does everyone talk in the same manner? What do young women think about it? What do experts have to say? All this and more in tonight's Women's Voices Radio. Here with me, Nivedita Suravaram, on WAER, Syracuse, Jazz 88. But first, the NPR News.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Giles Snyder. Al-Qaeda conspirator Zacarias Moussaoui was formally sentenced to life in prison this morning in federal court in Virginia. But before he was sentenced, 3 family members of 9/11 victims addressed Moussaoui in open court. NPR's Ann Hawk reports.
Rosemary Dillard, who lost her husband in the Pentagon attacks, walked to the podium first in a bright turquoise suit. Dillard told Moussaoui he had wrecked her life and she feels nothing but disgust for him. She said she hopes Moussaoui sits in prison without sun or sky and disappears from public view for all of history. Abraham Scott, who lost his wife in the Pentagon attacks, told Moussaoui al-Qaeda would not destroy this country's freedoms. Scott said he looks forward to seeing Osama bin Laden prosecuted. And Lisa Dolan, who lost her husband, a naval officer at the Pentagon, said, "To Mr. Moussaoui, only one thing. There is still one final judgment day." Ann Hawk, NPR News, at the federal courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia.
The U.S. military has released what it says are video clips of al-Qaeda and Iraq leader Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. Major General Rick Lynch showed the tape to reporters today. He said the clips were unedited parts of a video that Zarqawi released on the internet last week.
What he didn't show you were the clips that I showed. Wearing New Balance sneakers with his uniform, surrounded by supposedly competent subordinates who grabbed the hot barrel of a just-fired machine gun.
General Lynch said the video was found during raids on purported al-Qaeda safe houses. He said that planning documents were also seized, that they show that Zarqawi is focusing efforts inside of Baghdad and that it's only a matter of time before he's caught. The House has overwhelmingly approved a measure aimed at stopping nuclear weapons from being smuggled into the country. The bill calls for the screening of nearly all cargo for radiological materials at seaports. A Senate committee has approved a similar bill, but that proposal requires U.S.-bound cargo to be screened overseas. It sets up a test program at 3 foreign seaports. President Bush made a renewed pitch for changes to immigration law during a day-early Cinco de Mayo celebration at the White House today. NPR's Don Gagne reports.
The president, who watched a deal on immigration fall apart in Congress last month, is trying to revive the issue. In brief remarks prior to a traditional Mexican performance at the White House, he indirectly addressed criticisms by some that today's immigrants don't do enough to assimilate once they come to this country.
Those who come here to start new lives in our country have a responsibility to understand what America's about, and the responsibility to learn the English language so they can better understand our national character and participate fully in American life. That's what we want.
The president stressed that immigrants are important to the U.S. economy, that borders can be tightened, but that a temporary guest worker program would mean fewer illegal immigrants. Don Gagne, NPR News, the White House.
Wall Street today, stocks were up. The Dow closed up 38 points to 11,438. The Nasdaq was up 19. This is NPR News. The Israeli parliament has approved the country's new coalition government. The 65-49 vote today clears the way for Prime Minister Ehud Olmert and his 25-member cabinet to be sworn in. Olmert's 4-party coalition controls 67 of parliament's 120 seats. In a policy speech to parliament, Olmert said he preferred to reach a negotiated deal with the Palestinians, but failing that, he said he would act within 4 years to withdraw from large parts of the West Bank but keep larger settlements forever. The California Assembly has approved a measure to ban the home use of ultrasound machines. NPR's Richard Gonzalez reports.
Ultrasound machines are typically used in hospitals by medical professionals to monitor the growth of fetuses, but recently actor Tom Cruise said that he had purchased an ultrasound machine in order to watch the fetus of his then-pregnant fiancée, Katie Holmes. Their daughter was born last month. Assemblyman Ted Lieu says the machines were never designed as a toy for the rich and famous.
It's actually a potentially dangerous medical device. and if used improperly, they can cause damage to a developing fetus.
Liu's bill would ban the sale, lease, or distribution of ultrasound machines to anyone other than a licensed medical professional. It now heads to the California Senate, where it is expected to pass. Richard Gonzalez, NPR News, San Francisco.
Oil prices fell for a second day in a row, once again declining by more than $2 a barrel. Prices for U.S. crude for June deliveries settled just below $70 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange today. Analysts attribute the decline to a government report that shows U.S. gasoline supplies grew last week. In stocks, the S&P 500 rose 4 points today, closing at 1,312. I'm Giles Snyder, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from Novo Nordisk, working to improve diabetes treatment in the U.S. For 80 years, diabetes care has been our passion, not just our business.
Women's voices, making our way, determined to hear her story. Women's voices, taking a stand, dynamic and strong, confident, sweet harmony. Women's voices, every day.
Hi, good evening and welcome to Women's Voices Radio. This is Nivedita Suravaram, tonight's producer and host. Tonight's topic is plastic surgery. I went ahead and interviewed young women here in Syracuse to find out what exactly they think about plastic surgery. Do they think that the surgeon's knife is the latest beauty aid? Do young women want a perfect face with a perfect eyebrow, lips, nose, and eyes? So let's listen to parts of those conversations.
In my opinion, plastic surgery is just strictly for beauty reasons. For beauty enhancement. I personally would not go for it. I would never pay thousands of dollars just for just for material, or not material, for beauty enhancement reasons. I just think that everyone is made differently for a reason. So they should keep their looks. But as far as people who have been affected with like burn marks or things of that nature, I think that if they feel that they would feel better about themselves if they were to return back to their original appearance, then I agree with that. But as far as just for cosmetic reasons, I don't support plastic surgery, and I would never pay for it myself.
I would not recommend my friends for plastic surgery. I know the background of it, I know the dangers of it, and I think it's superficial, gross, fake. And any girls that do it are stupid. Any guys that do it are even worse. I don't know, I think you should just be proud of what you have and be happy that you are your body instead of changing it. I don't know, I think it's a good way for doctors to make money unnecessarily.
I think I'm really not for plastic surgery. Like plastic surgery for some kind of medical condition, or if you have some medical problems, then it's good plastic surgery. But otherwise, just for cosmetic purposes or just for looking good, it's not good, because a lot of risks with that. And if someone comes and asks me, should I get a plastic surgery done, first thing I would ask them, why do you want to get it done? If it's going to just for looking good or just to get your face up or something like that, then it's not worth it. But if it's seriously some kind of problems they're having without it, they should get the plastic surgery done.
Well, I think I personally would never go for plastic surgery. I'm pretty comfortable with my body, but I think that if someone really didn't like the way an aspect of their features, the way they looked, I think that it's fine as long as it doesn't go overboard. I don't think you should change your complete physical appearance to try and fit in with norms. But if there's something that really bothers you, I think it's a good idea to get it fixed just so you feel better about yourself. I would definitely support something about burn marks, or if they had breast cancer, going for augmentation for that. But for beauty too, if you really dislike something about yourself, I think it would make you feel better in the long run, then I think it's perfectly fine to go and have it fixed. Well, I would tell my friends if they really wanted to go that if it really bothered them, then then you should go for it. But I would also tell them that they look fine the way they are, because I personally don't think that people should judge people based on their looks alone.
Well, my opinion on plastic surgery is I know I would never personally have it, but I mean, that's not to say that other people obviously don't have the right to have plastic surgery. I mean, I guess if it's something that they want to and they can afford it and it'll make them feel better, then they certainly have every right to, although I know I would personally never have plastic surgery. My advice to be for any of my friends who came to me wanting plastic surgery, I would personally try to convince them not to, just because personally I think that while some people, it may boost their self-esteem to have plastic surgery and they might feel more confident. I personally kind of feel that if you think that you have to go under the knife to try to make yourself look better and you feel like plastic surgery is your only resort, then I kind of feel like your problems are more deeper than just something that can be cut with a knife. I feel like your problems, it might be something more that mentally that has to do with, your self-esteem and your emotions. So I think instead of trying to go for plastic surgery, you should more try to go deeper than that and try to work out, mentally any problems that you might have with your self-esteem or your self-confidence instead of just going for plastic surgery and changing your appearance. Because who's to say once you start having one plastic surgery, it may lead to 2, 3, 4, 5, or 10 of them. And I think that gets a little ridiculous sometimes.
I think plastic surgery is fine for people that would like to do it. I would never personally do it, but I know people that have and have liked it. And I do know about the side effects, but that's why I wouldn't do it. My advice would be, depending on what the surgery they would like is. Like if it was for a nose job or something, then it would depend how self-conscious they were about it, how it really affected their life socially, and whether it would really make a positive impact on their life if that happened, if they got the surgery.
I definitely support plastic surgery. I'm all about it. My cousin is going to be a plastic surgeon. I would have plastic surgery for vanity and health reasons, not gonna lie. Like, I'm gonna have a nose job. Like, I need it. I have a deviated septum, but I also don't like my nose. So if it's going to, if people have looked into plastic surgery and are aware of the fact that they are changing part of their body and are like okay to go through with it, like psychologically, I say go for it. Liposuction is kind of like one of those things that I'm a little bit more into. Like, if you've tried everything else, like, I know I have love handles and I can't get rid of them, I'm okay with them. But, like, if you've tried everything else, it's like what you really want to do and you're really okay with it, I say go for it. Like, if she's doing it for the right reasons and not just because, like, some guy told her to, then go for it.
I don't see plastic surgery as being something extremely popular among my generation, 20-somethings here in Syracuse, but even those who do have it keep it pretty quiet, so it might be very popular. I think it would be awesome to have plastic surgery, but I don't think that I could mentally prepare myself. There's such a stigma with it, although it would be nice to be extra gorgeous and have no flaws and all that other fun stuff. I think that women who choose to get plastic surgery, although they say they do it for themselves, often do it for attractive purposes, trying to, get men in their life to think more highly of them, or just for a first impression, whether it be job, socially, anything. It's great to have a first impression of just absolute gorgeousness. It definitely helps hide any other flaws that you have if your exterior is flawless.
Say for the most part that plastic surgery is pretty trivial, but it depends on the person. I mean, I certainly wouldn't tell someone not to do it. I mean, if they feel like they need to change something about themselves that desperately, then I would say whatever. I mean, there's starving children in Africa, but if you want to have your breasts done, then that's fine. But as far as, there are people out there who find it necessary, like, they have scars that they want covered, or they have something about themselves that, they feel that people look at them differently about. And when I say that, I don't mean their breasts or liposuction. I would mean like, scars on their body that they would feel that people look at them differently for. That I am okay with, but as far as, I want to get my breasts enlarged. Yeah, I don't really care much for that. I myself wouldn't have any done. I don't feel it's necessary because it's painful, I'm sure, and it's expensive, I'm sure. And once again, there are starving children in Africa who can use the money for food.
I believe in plastic surgery, but only for corrective purposes. Only if it corrects imperfections from birth or from accidents, burn marks or scars, or anything that can, I guess, differentiate the person from the rest of the society and make them feel uncomfortable about themselves. But if this is something to just look prettier or just have their eyes more squiggly or have their lips redder, it really shouldn't take place. It should, if a person comes to a plastic surgeon for this type of surgery just to make themselves look prettier without any purpose, it probably should be directed to a psychologist, not a doctor.
I would like to do plastic surgery about my butt and my legs because they are so fat. So if that's not hurt, I will do that. And if it's cheap, yeah. And maybe Korean is a good place to do that. Maybe it's depends on which part they want to do the surgery. Like if they are really, their nose are really ugly, or if she want to do surgery on their nose, then I'll say yes. So if my friends want to do surgery and she has the budget and her nose is really ugly or some other parts are really ugly, I'll say yes.
I think that plastic surgery is a personal choice. I am against young girls getting plastic surgery like as birthday gifts for their sweet 16 and like all these new things that parents are doing for their kids now. I think that's really inappropriate because you're not even fully developed yet. But I think, once you're older, your kids are grown, middle-aged, if you just want to get like a few things to make yourself feel better or just to prevent, the natural aging process, I think that's acceptable as long as you don't go overboard and just change your whole entire personal look.
I don't think that plastic surgery is a bad idea. It's one of those things that if you want it, go for it. And I think it's getting really, really popular now with the media and everything you see on TV with the obsession of looking younger. It's one of those things I can definitely say that you can't rule it out. Couldn't see myself doing it, but I can't rule it out.
I definitely think the media influences a lot of people. They think that they have to look a certain way in order to fit in with people, but in reality, it's really not the way normal people look. So I think people should just learn to accept the way they look for the most part, but like I said, if there's something that really bothers you, you should go and get it changed if it'll make you feel better.
I personally am not really for a lot of the celebrities who go and have plastic surgery. That's not to say some people don't have plastic surgery for the right reasons. I know people who have had breast cancer and have had mastectomies, and they have breast reconstruction surgery. I think something like that is perfectly acceptable. And I know of one celebrity, the one who was on Everyone Loves Raymond, she had like 4 C-sections, and she had plastic surgery on her stomach. I feel like something like that might be a little more credible and acceptable. But I think a lot of times some of the celebrities you see who keep going out and they keep getting breast augmentations, they're getting liposuction, Botox, facelifts. I feel like at some point it just sets this beauty ideal that's so unattainable and it's so unrealistic. And I think that just pushes these issues of self-esteem and self-confidence onto young girls who they don't really need it. I think it just sets this totally absurd beauty ideal, and it's something that most people can't even afford, so they can't really even attain. I think media definitely plays a role in getting people into plastic surgery because, media in Hollywood, they're the ones who are always portraying it, and you see so many tabloid stories and even, sensational journalism, and you have the magazine shows like Extra and, Inside Edition, and, they highlight stuff like that. So I think think it definitely plays a role in it. I would think I would have to lean more towards a negative, especially the shows that are geared towards more a middle class audience, but it's like they totally, make them over. I mean, that's something that it's not going to happen to a lot of people. And like I said, I think it just kind of exemplifies this, beauty ideal or like perfect body that people feel that they have to have. And let's be honest, you could have all the plastic surgeries in the world and just some people will still never have a perfect body.
That was very interesting, very varied opinions. Let's talk to Virginia Blum, who wrote the book Flesh Wounds, The Culture of Cosmetic Surgery, after the break, here on Women's Voices Radio, WAER, Syracuse, Jazz 88.
Support for WAER is made possible in part by University Hospital, site of the region's Gamma Knife, a state-of-the-art neurosurgical device that allows doctors to treat previously inoperable brain tumors without invasive surgery involving an incision. Information available at Health Connections, 1-800-464-8668. University Hospital, medicine at its best.
Support comes from Eureka Crafts, locally owned and operated in Syracuse since 1983. Eureka Crafts is proud to announce a second location now open in Manlius on Route 92 between Pompey Center Road and Enders Road. 2 locations providing customers the art of the American craft. Online at eurekacrafts.com.
Support comes from Fair World Marketplace, creating jobs one purchase at a time through fairly traded handmade gifts, coffee, and chocolate from around the world. Fair World Marketplace, located at 4471 East Genesee Street on the corner of Erie Boulevard. The number is 446-0326.
Now, let's listen to the conversation that I had with Virginia L. Blum, the author of the book Flesh Wounds. She is also the professor of English at the University of Kentucky and director of the Committee on Social Theory. She has also written the book Hide and Seek, The Child Between Psychoanalysis and Fiction. Hi, Virginia. I welcome you on Women's Voices Radio.
Well, thank you very much.
In the first chapter, you mentioned about your first ever appointment with the plastic surgeon, and to your surprise, your mom had taken the appointment. Can you share your journey from being a teenager to writing a book on the same subject, plastic surgery?
Yeah, although it's a kind of discontinuous journey. But my own experience is a familiar one in the United States. I came from a middle-class Jewish family, and was a kind of rite of passage for many young Jewish women of my period to start thinking of the nose job. In fact, other people have expressed it to me as the conversation one has at a certain point, that this is just a familiar conversation Jewish girls would often have with their parents at a particular moment around 15 or 16. And sometimes the parents were openly said, you should have this done, as happened in my case. Other times parents might say it more indirectly, like, or recommend a rhinoplasty indirectly, which it would be something like, if you wanted to have that done, we would pay for it. And so, as I said, many of us just call it the conversation. And for me, I think I found it a little startling because I was actually, I thought I had escaped that. And so I was a little startled when my mother brought it up. And then she took me to the plastic surgeon, and plastic surgeon seduced me in the way people, I think my experience is pretty typical. He said to me, because again, I only went to the appointment because my mother talked me into it and said, just let's see what he has to say. And and of course he was going to say, when should do this? And he said to me, he showed me a famous model he had operated on and explained that the day after she got her bandages removed, she was approached by a modeling agency. And so it's one of these kind of transformational stories that I think are so compelling for us.
So do you think most of the doctors, they get their patients into going for these kind of surgeries, so psychologically they kind of, get them thinking that it is a very good thing to go for?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that, for various reasons. One is profit motive, but another reason is simply that, people who specialize in aesthetic, of course, I should subdivide this right now. There are different subspecialties of cosmetic surgery or plastic surgery, and, plastic surgery is reconstructive as well, and so it's not just aesthetic. But plastic surgeons, like anyone, like any expert, believe what they do is good, right? They like doing what they do, and many of the plastic surgeons I interviewed said that they look around. Often they'll be in a room looking at people and imagining how they would change them surgically. So there's that component as well, that when people come into their offices, they think that they can do something to make their appearance better. I think plastic surgeons, interestingly, prefer patients with who come in and very specifically say, I don't like the bump on my nose, right? If somebody comes in and says, I don't like my appearance, do something about it, plastic surgeons tend to hesitate over working on that person because they expect them to not be satisfied. And they are concerned with patients who aren't satisfied with the surgery.
Going back to the parents taking appointments with the doctors and giving it as a gift, I interviewed a couple of women over here for the show itself, and they were very happy that their mothers or their aunts would give the appointment as a birthday gift or support them financially. Is this a trend which is going on, especially in that 16 to 20, 21 age group?
Yeah, it's not a new trend. The central reason, really, why I bring up my own history is to focus on two central points, which is the role of the family, the role of people's families in one's body image, informing one's body image. And with regard to the role of the family, each person has an interfamilial and an extrafamilial experience. So arguably, there are extreme cultural imperatives to overvalue one's appearance right now, and also to, certain kinds of homogeneous, mainstreamed appearances or appearance conventions that can be quite compelling for teenagers. The family can protect teenagers from this, right? So the family either serves their children up to the larger cultural pressures, or they provide some kind of security against that. They can fortify their children against some of these pressures. And so, yeah, when teenage girls say, that was really great, my parents were so supportive, they paid for this, raises a number of questions for me. Of course, where did the children, how did that body image take place? Where did it come from? I don't think it just comes from outside the culture.
Yeah.
The parents are cultural members too, and they import those ideals into the family. And again, somebody would say to me, well, what's wrong with that? They're going to help their children look, quote unquote, better, right? They'll make their children more conventionally, or support their children in becoming more conventionally attractive, and thus their children will have better lives.
And look the perfect 10?
Yes, right. But this would be my response to that, because it's not just simply an anti-surgery response. My problem with plastic surgery is I don't actually think it makes people happy. I think it makes them happy for these individual surgeries. I think that there's a really high satisfaction rate post-surgery. But once you intervene surgically, you're on high alert.
Yeah.
So surgery, ironically, intensifies the anxiety about one's appearance it was intended to cure in the first place. And that's my concern, is that once you enter surgery as a solution to personal happiness, once that becomes a kind of viable solution and you have the surgical experience and you have that kind of, often for people there's a kind of intoxicating post-operative experience of, wow, I've really transformed myself. Now I will indeed be the perfect 10. And, people want to revisit that experience. They're also, again, they're on high alert.
Going back to the feel-good factor of it, how long does this plastic surgery exist? It's not that once it's done, it's over. You need to keep going.
It's structurally like consumer culture, right? Which is what makes it addictive. Because, that's what I claim in my book, is that, it is structurally addictive. Once a bit of yourself has been surgically transformed, and say there are two possibilities. One, you have yourself operated on and you like the result.
Yeah.
And then the rest of your body becomes a surgical possibility.
Yes.
So thereafter, say one has one's nose fixed, and one day you're looking in the mirror and you don't like your size.
Yeah.
You have a host of options, right? You can work out.
Yeah.
You can lose weight. You can forget about it, or you can have liposuction.
Is maybe people just think that this is an easy option for becoming beautiful or for weight reduction instead of going through this long journey of regular exercise and allotting a particular time slot in a day.
Right.
So,
right. I think it's true. I know that's one way people present plastic surgery, that it's an easy option, that it's easy.
Mhm.
You just kind of go to sleep, on a surgeon's table, and you wake up beautiful. I don't even think it's just that. I think it's also really been recruited into middle-class self-improvement discourse.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I mean, the way it's advertised now and the way I hear people talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
and the way really it's been represented on a host of these, crazy reality makeover programs is that actually you aren't taking advantage. You aren't taking advantage of what's out there if you don't have surgery.
Yes.
It would be kind of like not painting your house. I remember when I was doing research for this book, and that was the kind of metaphor surgeons would use. Like, do you let your house go without, do you let the paint peel indefinitely? And I thought that they were insane, recruiting these kind of middle-class self-improvement discourses to justify plastic surgery. But now it seems to really have kind of gone mainstream.
I was just watching a show yesterday, and they show a couple of people who go for multiple surgeries and some people who just go for a single surgery. The cost of this surgery varies from 28,000 to 50,000, and it's mostly the middle class which goes in for this.
Right. This isn't people's disposable income.
Yes.
This is people take out second mortgages on their homes.
Yes.
Because they relocate, instead of home ownership, for example, what they own is their body.
Mm-hmm.
And their body becomes a kind of a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
Because it becomes the site of happiness. That's really my concern.
Mm-hmm.
Again, is that the incredible anxiety, the consequences of this. What does it mean for people who are spending, middle-class subjects, right, who are spending such huge amounts of money on these surgeries, like out of the retirement fund?
Yes.
I ask questions like that about it. The other interesting economic component that I learned about plastic surgery during my research, and I think becomes ever more the case today, is the way in which because you ask about the price of these surgeries. The thing is that the surgeons, in order to market their surgeries, need to make them affordable.
Yes.
Right, and so, and they tend to be in $5,000 chunks. The way I learned this is I was trying to understand the trend in kind of incremental rejuvenating surgeries. And by that I mean a kind of an approach to, starting, instead of at one point having the whole big facelift, right, starting early, doing maybe the under eyes in the early 30s, the upper eyes in the mid-30s, brow lift, and the 40s, basically these kind of incremental rejuvenating surgeries.
Yes.
A mid-face lift at one point, and they all cost about $5,000, right? And so at each point, the person's saying, I want a blepharoplasty, which would be an eyelid lift, or do I want to go to Puerto Rico on a holiday?
Okay.
Do I want a mid-face lift, or do I want to put a down payment on a car? Right. So that they're substitutable for other consumer practices.
Yeah.
For other things you can do with the extra $5,000 one may have.
Yeah.
And you know, so that was really interesting to me because it had become such a trend among surgeons to advertise these kind of divide and conquer, you know, these incremental rejuvenating surgeries. And of course, that's because they could target the middle class consumer's pocketbook, right? Because most people can't afford to spend, you know, something like $30,000 on one big surgery.
Yeah.
And so it was really kind of economically pragmatic for them to actually make an aesthetic argument around this practice. Because I was really, you know, I was talking to a surgeon about who really disapproves of these incremental surgeries and thinks people wind up just looking lopsided. And so he was explaining to me why they do it. But then one also has to consider why women are open to that. You know, in other words, the surgeons can come up with this approach, but why are consumers interested in it? And I was thinking about the degree to which women are pretty accustomed to fragmenting our bodies.
Yes.
From an early age, right? So to say, oh, do this bit of you this year, and 5 years from now, do this other bit.
Yeah.
We're completely available to those prescriptions.
Because of the advancement in technology, one knows that this is the way they will look after the surgery. So has this development of technology reduced the risks involved?
The use of video technology, video imaging technology, has had was an incredible marketing device for the surgeons, because people would go and see themselves kind of, you know, Adobe Photoshop in place on the screen, and it was clear to me from talking to patients that and surgeons that seeing themselves transformed on the screen, seeing these computer-generated images of themselves was extremely compelling. That would typically make them want to have the surgery. Now, a lot of surgeons, after it was being used for a while, a lot of surgeons stopped doing this because the patients would be annoyed if they didn't, in fact, look like the images that had been projected pre-surgery.
Oh, okay.
And they would start complaining. They would say, hey, look, he said, and, you know, of course, the irony is the surgeons will always, you know, argue that people have certain expectations that are too high because, you know, they're working in flesh and blood, and everybody heals differently. What they're going to find when they operate on people is very different, and so you can never really predict what the results will be.
Yeah.
And yet this technology suggested the opposite. Suggested it was just like Adobe Photoshop. And so anesthesia, the risk, the healing, infection, all of the real health concerns associated with any surgery.
Yes. Could you tell our listeners some positive and negative effects of plastic surgery?
So what's positive about plastic surgery still, it's very important that we have it available, right? I mean, you know, they're surgeons. The technology does help people through all sorts of trauma, burn injuries, and
birthmarks or
birthmarks, right? I mean, I guess the question is, to what will we start calling a birthmark, a birth defect, right?
Yeah.
Like on how much are we going to be on high alert about birth defects? On the other hand, it seems like a very important contribution to the society.
Yes.
I think that the negative aspects, I really just worry that we're all becoming so incredibly anxious about our appearance, and that plastic surgery, you know, here, it's like a lot of people believe that it's actually because it's more and more affordable and more available across the culture, that it's actually holding out this possibility of democratizing beauty. I think that that's a complete fantasy. And I think we really learned as much simply from the move from the reality program, the makeover program, Extreme Makeover,
Yes.
where I think the underlying theme was that beauty was being democratized.
And make it available as cheaply, and the availability of it, convenient availability to the people.
Yes, that you can have, anybody has a right to be beautiful,
Yeah.
right? So that we found out almost immediately that it wasn't about democratizing beauty at all. And I think we found that out with the salon, where then they were thrown into a beauty contest with one another. Because once all of these people are transformed surgically, then there's a higher level of competition.
Yes.
Like, who's more beautiful becomes the question. So I don't think this was ever about democratizing beauty. I think it was about making people, I think people become more and more anxious about themselves, and the bar just goes ever higher.
Yeah.
That would be negative. And I also think it's another negative element, and it really concerns me, is I think people, despite the consent forms, despite all the information there is available about surgeries gone wrong, the complications ensuing from surgery, I really don't think people believe it. I think that now that it's thoroughly entrenched in the domain of consumer culture, people would, it's like telling somebody their mohair sweater will kill them.
Thank you so much, Virginia, for being on Women's Voices Radio.
Oh, thank you very much.
I spoke with two young women here in Syracuse, Tracy and Erin. Tracy has already gone for rhinoplasty, or popularly known as nose job, and Erin has been planning for rhinoplasty. So let's listen to what they have to say here on Women's Voices Radio.
Hi, thanks for calling me on Women's Voices Radio. I'm Tracy Smith. When I was a teenager, I decided to get plastic surgery because A, it wasn't that big of a deal in my high school, and B, I'm also from a family who encourages to basically do whatever you want, and if it makes you want to make your appearance better, then my parents and siblings are pretty much all for it. I think that if you're doing something that doesn't really harm anybody else and that you're just doing it for personal gain, be it professional or appearance-wise, or just make yourself feel better, I don't have any problems with that. I decided to do it when I was 15. I had a rhinoplasty, which is actually just in common terms a nose job. And basically I just had a large nose and wanted to get it smaller, and it wasn't that uncommon in my high school. Like I said, I came from a very affluent high school and area, and a lot of people were getting it done, and it really wasn't a big deal. I don't think that I was necessarily pressured or anything like that. It's kind of the attitude of, if you want something done, be it looks-wise or even personality or anything, you change it. And I'm a big proponent of that. As for anything different that I had to do, nothing really different, because you go in and you're out. It's very quick. The day before you prepare, but for me there was no mental preparation because it's a small thing. It's not like I'm wearing my mouth shut or anything for jaw surgery or doing some sort of total facelift. It's just a small part of your face and a small feature. So it really wasn't a big deal. And a couple of weeks afterward, I was totally fine and no one knew. There is a thought that once you have something done, it's common to go back over and over again. And I think that for the most part, that's true. I know a lot of people who have had plastic surgery. In my case, it was true because the cartilage regrew differently than what it was originally in my nose. So I had to go back and get it done over again. Again, it wasn't a big deal. It was just a touch-up, and that's what these things normally are when you go back. So overall, it was a good experience. I'd recommend it to anybody who wants to change themselves because, again, if they think that they're going to feel better, then they should do that. And I've had no regrets at all. Surgery only takes a few hours for that specific surgery. But I know people who have had other things done. I've had family members get their eyes done, nose done, chin done, cheeks, anything. That only takes a couple of hours. And if you can sustain some pain, some discomfort, it's really not that big of a deal. And a couple weeks later, you're pretty much good to go. I was running and swimming and biking and doing everything totally normally just a couple of days afterward. So it was just a little bit of discomfort.
Hi, this is Erin Shaw on Women's Sources Radio. I almost got plastic surgery when I was a sophomore in college. I wanted to get a nose job, rhinoplasty. I've hated my nose since I was 13, as in I won't let people take side profile pictures of me. I cry when I see it. I absolutely hate it. I hate my nose. So rhinoplasty seemed very appealing to me. I researched it. It was going to cost me about $4,000. I looked at some of the best doctors in Richmond, which is where I'm from, and I was very close to actually going in and getting the surgery done, but instead I decided to study abroad, which was kind of my option, either study abroad or get a nose job. Still, though, when I grow up, I'm still considering, once I have enough of my own disposable income, to get plastic surgery, just because I feel like if one facial feature or one physical feature is holding you back so much that it's that much of a self-esteem issue, it's definitely worth it if it's going to improve that aspect of your mental health that much. The reason I wanted to get a nose job was primarily my own feelings. I had gotten comments before on my nose. One of my best friend's mom refers to me and another friend as the Schnoz sisters because we've got large noses. But that doesn't bother me as much as my own feelings. I get self-conscious when I'm in a public situation and I have to give a public speech or something, and I worry about which way I'm facing. And when I meet new people, especially if it's someone I'm interested in, how do I show them the side of my face? It really takes over. It's a big mental issue, and it's all my own fault. People have told me, no, your nose is fine, but I don't believe it. And I think that what I believe is most important. My mom, when I told my parents that I wanted to get rhinoplasty, my mom laughed at me. She said it was ridiculous. She said plastic surgery is superficial and that I had so much other stuff going for me. I was smart, I was ambitious. I had a lot of other aspects going for me. My dad was much more understanding and told me if that's what was going to make me happy to go for it, and that he would help me pay the cost. And as I grow older, I'm now 4 years older, and they're still kind of in the same situation. My mom thinks that plastic surgery is ridiculous, that you should look inside yourself for something less superficial to take pride in. And my dad just kind of whatever. He supports it if that's what I want. For a nose job, the side effects of rhinoplasty, I know for a few days it's excruciating pain. They break your nose and kind of cut into it and shape it up the way they want it to. So I've broken my nose before. I know that that's painful, but I also know that surgery itself is painful. And I know that for a few weeks you look worse than you feel, and you're not supposed to look in the mirror because that'll cause even more mental issues. So it's a big time commitment and emotional commitment. But again, as long as you're aware of those consequences when you go in to get the surgery and you're fine with it, I think that it's okay. I just think that you need to do your research beforehand and understand everything you're signing up for, because it's not a simple solution. If I got rhinoplasty, I would not tell people. Clearly my friends would notice a difference, and I would tell them because I'm secure enough with them that I wouldn't feel inferior. But to strangers, I would never want to tell them, I got a nose job, this isn't natural. I would want them to think, because that's the whole reason I want to get the surgery, is because I want to feel comfortable in my own skin. So I don't want to tell other people that I'm not like this. This isn't who I am. I would want to. I have never met anyone who has had plastic surgery for beauty reasons. If I were to get the surgery done, would I recommend it to others? I think that depends on why the person was going in to get plastic surgery. I think there's an age issue involved. I think too many girls, especially at a young age, are thinking that they need to be perfect. I think the media enhances that necessity. So I would say to young girls, definitely not. Not until you're at least 18 or 20 should you even consider plastic surgery. When you do consider plastic surgery, research it thoroughly, talk to the doctors, and then if it's something that's really going to change your self-esteem, I would say go for it. If it's just because you want to look better in a certain shirt or something, then I would say it's not the right answer. There are other options.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
According to American Society of Plastic Surgeons, in the year 2005 alone, more than 1.8 million went for plastic surgery purely for cosmetic reasons. Hundreds and thousands of more are considering plastic surgery for cosmetic reasons. The people whom we heard today may not represent the cross-section of the society, but we hope today's Women's Voices episode will help you to make your decision better. You have tuned into Women's Voices Radio at WAER, Syracuse, Jazz 88. Now let's hear to two monthly features on Women's Voices Radio, Women in Sports by Gloria and Health Notes by Antara Mitra after the break. So stay tuned on Women's Voices Radio.
Support for WAER is made possible in part by our members and by Syracuse Real Food Cooperative, a one-stop natural food store. Located near Syracuse University at 618 Kensington Road, the co-op is open daily 9 to 9. The phone number is 472-1385. Syracuse Real Food Cooperative, open to everyone.
WAER appreciates the support of Onondaga Community College, which announces the opening of its new student residence halls this fall. 5-bed suites with a full kitchen, living room, cable, and internet access, all helping to provide the complete college experience. To learn more, the number is 498-7252 or online at sunyocc.edu.
WAER is supported by St. Joseph's Human Motion Institute, offering orthopedic and spine programs from prevention to diagnosis, treatment, and rehabilitation. The Human Motion Institute at St. Joseph's Hospital Health Center, a higher level of care, 458-2222, or online at sjhsyr.org.
I grew up near Belmont, so going to the track was as common as going to Yankee Stadium, at least for me anyway. I loved going to the races, and I remember always seeing lots of women on the track, and not all of us were placing bets either. There's a long tradition of women in horse racing. The first woman jockey was Alicia Meynell of England. She first competed in a 4-mile race in York in 1804. She went on to beat a leading male jockey and win a race the following year. Another first that I found interesting is Yukiko Makihara. She became the first woman to ride a winner at a Japanese racetrack when she guided Arabian Night to victory at Nakayama Racecourse in 1996. American women have been owners, trainers, grooms, and jockeys since the 19th century. In the 20th, they began to make a name for themselves. Let's consider the 1904 Kentucky Derby winner, Elwood. Laska Durnell owned Elwood and became the first woman owner to win the Derby. And she didn't even tell trainer hubby Charles about it. Something tells me he'd have put the thumbs down on the idea. Aside from the owners, a total of 12 women trainers have sent 13 starters postward in the Derby, and 4 women have ridden in the famed Run for the Roses. Of the 4 women who have ridden, Diane Crump was the first female jockey to ride in the Kentucky Derby. That was in 1970. More and more, the world of horse racing is embracing women, albeit slowly. Admittedly, we focus on the accomplishments of the rising stars, those who shine brightly. All too often, though, stepping on the track is a step back in time, and it's not always charming. That is to say, although there are some successful women jockeys, this is still the area in horse racing where discrimination shows up the most. Even the top female jockeys seldom get the best horses. It's getting a little better, but racing is still a male-dominated sport. I recently read that in India, women are also making inroads into racing. They are too a traditional citadel of male dominance. Last year at the Bangalore Race Club, a woman won a derby, a first in their history. Plus, changes in rules are making owning horses more affordable, and women are certainly seizing the opportunity. Just an end note, the women of Iran compete with the men in an annual event called the Nomads Horse Racing Competition. The race takes place sometime around the end of May, so if you're in Iran at that time, be sure to check it out. If for some reason, however, you're stuck in the States, tune into the Kentucky Derby on Saturday. And that's it for this evening's sports special. This is Gloria Craigle, and you're listening to Women's Voices Radio on WAER Syracuse, Jazz 88.
News from the world of cancer tonight. It's being touted as the world's first cancer vaccine. Merck and GlaxoSmithKline are both headed to the Food and Drug Administration as early as June of this year for approval of their cervical cancer vaccinations. The Merck vaccine is called Gardasil and the Glaxo vaccine is called Cervarix. According to the National Cervical Cancer Coalition, the NCCC, about 14,000 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer disease in the United States each year, and nearly 4,000 women die annually from this disease. Research shows that the vast majority of cervical cancers originate from a virus, the human papillomavirus, or HPV as it is commonly referred to. There are over 100 different strains of the HPV virus, but most infections are harmless. According to the Mayo Clinic, when exposed to HPV, the immune system response in most women prevents the virus from doing harm. In a small group of women, however, the virus survives for years before it eventually converts some cells on the surface of the cervix into cancer cells. According to Diane Harper, Associate Professor of Community and Family Medicine in Dartmouth Medical School, in an interview with U.S. News and World Report, it could be 13 years after an HPV infection that cervical cancer develops. The slow growth and complete lack of symptoms is what makes it so deadly. The new vaccines, however, have proved to be very effective in their clinical trials. According to a Merck news release, their vaccine was 100% effective against 2 forms of HPV in Phase 3 clinical trials, the last step before application for FDA review. Harper, who headed one of the clinical trials for Cervarix, also found equally positive results. This has led the FDA to accelerate its approval process, and Harper anticipates the vaccine to be available as early as this summer. It should be noted, though, that the vaccine will not eradicate cervical cancer, since it does not target all the strains of the virus. The vaccines provide protection primarily against 2 strains, HPV 16 and 18. These 2 strains, Harper said, account for about 70% of cervical malignancies. But not all cervical cancers are caused by the HPV virus. Also, since the virus does not cure existing malignancies or infections, it cannot prevent such cases from developing into cervical cancer. Thus, medical personnel caution that women, even those who get the vaccine, should continue getting pap smears to check for abnormalities. How does the virus work? Since cervical cancer has been found to occur after the virus hijacks cervical cells and turns them malignant, the vaccine works by boosting the body's natural immune system against HPV, similar to the way other vaccines work. But there are still many questions left unanswered by the vaccine. What is the best age to administer the vaccine, and how long will the protection last? Will women need a booster dose later in life? And should both men and women be administered the vaccine? Current research on the way the vaccine works indicates that the vaccine will likely be administered to preteens or teenagers, but the FDA will make the final determination about who should be vaccinated and when. There are also questions about vaccination in the developing world, where 80% of cervical cancer deaths occur. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has pledged $50 million for the prevention of cervical cancer in the coming decades, but it is not clear how big a role vaccination will play in its efforts. But by all indications, coming soon to a pharmacy near you will be a cervical cancer vaccination. This is Antara Mitra with your monthly health note.
And that's the show tonight. I'm Nivedita Suravaram, tonight's producer and host. I thank the young women who shared their thoughts with us, and special thanks to Virginia Blum for sharing her expertise on the subject. I also want to thank Erin and Tracy for sharing their experiences. My thanks to Mary, who directed the show tonight, and Tracy, who engineered it. The Women's Voices theme was written by Jackie Tara Washington, recorded by us with Mark Kapani on guitar. Please let us know how you like the show. Email us at radiowoman@aol.com. Women's Voices Radio is a community-based collaborative project. The views that we and our guests express do not necessarily reflect the views of WAER. We are grateful to WAER for their continued and enthusiastic support of community-based radio by and about women. Next week, join us with host Ilana Levy, who spoke to 3 women who have spent time in psychiatric hospitals and were labeled as mentally ill. So don't miss all this and more right here on Women's Voices Radio. WAER, Syracuse, Jazz 88. Same time next week. Until then, good night.